First off, good festive New Year tidings to you all. Today what I have for you is an extra bonus piece of content to finish off the year, and I need to intro it because the format is a little weird. For about a year, I've wanted to add some kind of podcast format to the channel where there's minimal visual editing but with a good hour of chat. I think this would really suit the audience here, who I know a lot of people, like myself, enjoy to use as background audio content for just our daily lives, sleep routines, hobby, and so on. My plan would be for it to be some kind of variety show, which means it could be just myself talking about a topic or have guests or some viewer comments as well. And I'll say that with any content like this, it will always be additional to the standard lore content on the channel, not in any way replacing it. My schedule for that would remain the same. For this video, an opportunity came along for a group podcast with the guys from Adeptus Ridiculous, who I've all known for some time now. It was just easiest and best for them to host it, and their version has been up on the channel for a week or so, link below. So this version is my edit for you guys, and really it's just extra content, like I said, for the channel this year. The topic today overall is post-Space Marine 2. There's been an explosion of interest in 40k and the lore, and so we've seen some really massive channels and personalities getting involved. And I'm humbled that often it seems you yourselves in the audience have directed such people toward this channel. So Charlie, Critical, Moistcr1tikal, whichever title you choose, Charlie is just a massive figure in the YouTube content space, and someone you might be surprised to know I really enjoyed despite my quite dry personality, because I've enjoyed his obsessions like the garbage trucks.
Outlawed in the 80s. God, this thing is fueled by nightmares and double XL diesel. Oh, just look at that contamination as it rolls by.
And his general takes on the evolving space of content creation, games and so on, like enjoying the comical, mismanaged, steady downfall of, say, Ubisoft. So while today is not technically any first episode of an official series here on the channel, it is a flavour of what we may have in some form soon. I'll note, obviously, that the recording over Discord can be a little bit rough, so the audio between us isn't all that it could be, so I welcome your comments, your thoughts, and any topic discussion ideas you would like me to discuss across any future episodes. And with that said, let's just go straight into it.
First things first, before someone who's been with us in the past and known for a while, Luetin, how you doing?
Good to be here, good to be back. Yeah, loads of new 40k stuff coming out at the moment and tons to talk about, so yeah, it's exciting times.
Yeah, and in addition, Mr. Moistcr1tikal, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing really well. I'm going to be kind of like the big idiot here that's, you know, kind of just like the new guy to the block. I'm very excited to be here.
The good thing about Warhammer is there's never a stupid question because there's always so much going on with it. There's not really like a topic today. It's just kind of, you know, like Luetin is grandfather, big daddy lore man. I'm very much new kid on the block. DK is buddy learning about it. And you recently have been getting more into the lore, mostly, right, Charlie?
Yeah, so I'd say the rabbit hole has been unbelievable. So I started with the first Space Marine game because when Space Marine 2 was about to come out, I wanted to replay the first one. And nice. I loved the first one. It was great. And the second one came out and it was unbelievable. And then I took a big plunge into the lore. So big shout out to Luetin. Anytime my car comes on, his videos start playing. I don't drive without listening to Luetin lore videos. And it's becoming a problem. Like I'm buying minis out the wazoo. I've got fucking crazy amounts of pre-painted armies that I've been assembling. It's so good.
Wait, hold the phone. We're already in the miniature side of things.
Oh,
miniatures.
If I just had not just miniatures. I mean like models. So I bought like like some of those resin models that a couple companies put out like on third party. Just because I think they're really nice display pieces. I've got some Joy toys for the Primarchs.
Oh man!
Oh wow! So you already
deep.
You already have a pile of shame?
Yeah. Oh wow! A pile isn't even the right word. So I've got like
a room of shame.
Yeah, it's like a little common area in my upstairs is nothing but various Warhammer armies I've been finding on eBay, and then some of the models people have been making, like these resin ones on Etsy and eBay. It's a lot.
I mean, Luetin specifically, like I very much had my Luetin phase as well. It was always really surreal.
What?
And oh yeah, dude, you kidding me?
No, I meant like you've given up now. Is that you just don't return
He's
anymore?
out of that phase.
Done with
man.
that. Finished that.
Yeah,
now. I moved on to better
out of the
things.
way, old man. It's the new Padawans coming. No, I'm actually a little curious. Which of his videos did you start with, Charlie?
I went in order, so I started with like the Necron, like the Necron tier, the War in Heaven.
Yeah.
I went from that video and just followed chronologically through the playlist. So right now, I just finished. I think it was the Legion of the Damned is the one I just finished. So I can't remember
damn.
which one comes after.
Oh, good
Smashing
days.
through it. See, this was going to be one of my questions, which was sort of how much do you know about 40K so far? I was really curious just to know, so because you've sort of alluded and mentioned about constantly like checking into the lore, and obviously from the Space Marine games, you pick up a lot. Do you feel you have a pretty solid grasp of the general picture of 40K lore at this point?
I think, like, as far as the basics go and, like, the factions, I think I have a decent handle on, like, the very cookie-cutter nutshell, synopsis of them. It's more so, like, now I'm getting to the point where I'm diving more into, like, specific battles and stuff like that, like the Demonculaba, like Uriel and all that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most exciting points to be at, because it's very overwhelming for people coming into it, and once you can get a good grip on the basic sort of foundation, then you get into the really, really interesting stuff. The Emperor, his intentions, is he good or bad, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, I mean, Luetin, you and I on your recommendation, listened to First Lord of the Imperium. And like, I feel like a lot of Warhammer lore is a bit of a bell curve. It's really hard to start off with. And then when you get that hook, there's like a million things into it and so many things to consider. And then you get into the really weeds of it all. And that's when it can get sometimes a bit overwhelming again.
I mean, just as a short, you can go off on a huge tangent, but just the short one is kind of, nobody really knows still what the Emperor is. Nobody really knows what he is. Yes, there's these dreams where he seems to have been around in humanity since the beginning, but you don't know. Is he just some weird creation of Malkador? Is he a relic from the Dark Age of technology? And he sort of conjured up memories for people. You don't know. Nobody really knows what he is. And that's kind of interesting. It's like, have we been trapped like a kind of horrible wasp spawn where they kind of lay eggs? And you know what I mean? Like, is he parasiting off humanity? It's super interesting to speculate and think about that.
Oh, I know what he is. He's a corpse on a throne. He's a big, dirty, filthy corpse on a throne.
So I haven't actually played any of the tabletop yet. That's a whole nother plunge that I'm excited for, but also a little scared by. Like, that shit, like, it seems frighteningly complex. But I will be playing Necron for that because they're my favorite.
Let's
baby.
go. Let's go. Sorry.
That's pretty much all I've played for 10th edition so far, really. Like,
they're fun.
Like a really good spot in the game, right?
Yeah, it's its own like
until today.
Well, part of it. Other parts got buffed. They've been all over the place in 10th, but no, Necrons are really fun, and their new model stuff has gone. Like, I mean, when I saw the Silent King that came out, I was like, oh, he's so cool.
Yeah.
He was so much fun. Okay, did you read any of the books then? Did you read like Infinite Divine or?
No, so I haven't read any of the books. I read them by proxy through Luetin reading them. That's kind of how I consume the books.
It's just that you have to. That's the wrong answer. You have to say, and I also got really into the audiobooks as well, because otherwise.
Oh, that's right. And I've been checking it out through Audible, Luetin's Audible.
Yes.
Ah.
That's the other thing. It's very overwhelming for people coming in. They might sort of play Space Marine as and they think, okay, great, I would love this verse. I want to know more. And then people start saying to you, oh, check out the Horus Heresy series. They start to look into it and think, oh yeah, this is great. Check out the first book, and then learn that there's like 50 more books after that.
Yeah, it's daunting. The amount of books blew me away. Like, I knew the world had existed for like 3 decades, but it didn't dawn on me just how many books and how much lore that would be. Like, there's more lore in 40K than there is for like actual humanity. It's crazy.
It's genuinely true. And I mean, honestly, there's also never really anything to feel bad about, because some people I meet and they're like, oh, I haven't gotten into the books yet. And like, me and DK just finished the first Horus Heresy book like 2 months ago.
What?
Oh yeah, we never got into Horus Rising based on your recommendations, Luetin. You always said the best place to start is anywhere you want.
That's true. That is true. You can start anywhere with it. But the Heresy book series or audio book series it's really, really good. But the key thing, if you start with it, Charlie, is the first 4 books are solid. after that, you can pick and choose a little, because there are some where they kind of get really into like one specific character. And it's like, some people just want to go through it back to back because they want to be really comprehensive, but it can be variable, as you might imagine from a book series of like 50 novels, you know.
Luetin, if anything happens to Torgadon, I'm going to kill everyone in this room and then myself. Him and Garvio Loken are the coolest goddamn characters I have read in a while. 30K Space Marines have such character. So have you read any of the books yet, or are you like waiting to step in?
Yeah, no, I haven't actually read any of the books yet. A buddy, so pretty much everyone around me has gotten into Warhammer as well. So a bunch of my buddies have started reading them. So I'll probably start pretty soon.
It's painful how good they are.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't expect them to be holding up with like other like real books.
I think some of the really good ones to start with are some of those novella ones, Bricky, Valdor, Birth of the Imperium.
Valdor,
because
yeah,
if you have a good grounding in sort of the 40K foundation, like Charlie's saying, that one starts, Charlie, basically sort of pre-Great Crusade. So it starts on Earth, like as they're kind of getting started and almost rebuilding human society. And it's super interesting because it gets into kind of ethical issues and sort of the Emperor being a bit of a hypocrite and all this kind of stuff. It's super interesting, but it's a great springboard. I would almost read that before I went on to the Heresy series, personally.
I think The Last Church too.
The Last Church. Yeah, maybe The Last Church as well. It's a good story, but some people are like, the Emperor's arguments are not, he's not a good debater. Like,
no, he's very much not, but it paints a picture of the Emperor as like a hypocritical tyrant.
Is The Last Church about when the Emperor was, he got into the argument with the guy about like his ethics and what he was trying to do? I can't remember the name of the guy.
Pretty much, yeah. He was like one of the last church founders, and he just kind of walks in and he's like, "You're stupid, and everything you like is stupid." And then he like burns the church to the ground.
Yeah, as you do.
Maturing in 40K is real in Warhammer is loving the Emperor and then really being like, "Wow, this guy's a dick."
I have a question. Charlie, I'm just curious, having sort of learned about 40K and how completely insane it can be, but also how quite heavy it can be, what has been your impression coming in? Do you find it to be silly, stupid, ridiculous? I know obviously the Space Marine games. Do you find you get more of a feel of it as being like ridiculous and over the top? Or does it feel gritty and grounded? Like if you had to fall one way or the other, which way would you go?
For me, it's gritty and grounded. Like so some of the earlier stuff feels more satirical than more like the more recent stuff. But for some reason, for me, it hits as like a really grounded take on what this really far future would look like. Like the way that information is dispersed where you can't even trust some of the information that comes out really just makes it feel so real to me. Even if something is truly over the top, it just feels like, oh, that makes sense. Like that's still like grounded to me. Like even if something like I already mentioned the Demonculaba, even something as over the top ridiculous as that is like, no, like that's turbo evil, like cartoonishly evil, but it still feels like grounded. Like this feels like something that could happen.
I think, I'm sorry, Bricky, I'll let you go on, but I was just going to say, I was thinking about this exact thing today, and people always sort of have this thing of, they either look at it seriously or not. What it feels like, 40K, what it always feels like to me is, I know how insane it is, I know how ridiculous it is, but I choose to approach it in a more grounded, serious way, because you can do that too. And it always makes me think of like, kind of like a John Carpenter film, like the classic The Thing. It's ridiculous. Even like, for example, when in The Thing, they see the head walking off on the floor and he's like, "You've got to be fucking kidding." And it's like, yeah, it's insane. But somehow they all play it straight. They all play it so serious. And that somehow grounds it still, makes it feel, and I always think 40K feels like that to me. You know?
No, that's basically exactly what I was going to agree with you on. Is it's farcical to an extreme, but they play it perfectly. They treat it so seriously that it becomes almost humorous. Me and DK did an episode a bit ago. It was on the Adeptus Arbites, which is like the Judge Dredd cops.
Literally the Judge Dredd cops.
Literally the Judge Dredd cops. They've gotten some good style recently, but the funny thing was they had like their book of law, and their book of law is the size of like multiple, like a city-sized library, and more laws are being added every single day to the point where it's impossible to track it. So no matter what happens, most prisoners die of starvation before they get a hearing, because it takes that long for you to or they die of old age because it takes that long to sift through the law books to see if you're actually innocent. It's just like, it's a nice little like poke at, like the systems. It's great. It's a good time.
And yeah, and even hearing that, like that is like that's silly, but to me that still feels like so grounded. Like I could take that seriously.
Well, it makes sense for the world too,
Yeah.
right? I think that's one of the big things is that everything is stupid, but you when you are able to keep it in, well, consistency is not what I would consider Warhammer to be the best word with, but at the end of the day, like everything is still in that same tonal realm. Well, besides Necrons, what else have you snagged?
So the big one is Necron, but I've also been really getting into like the Grey Knights. I think the Grey Knights are super cool. I've been a big fan of the Grey Knights, and then also Orcs. I think Orcs, and Shai just mentioned.
Let's
Orcs as well.
go.
I think Orcs are so fucking cool, and they're like the perfect example of being silly. Like they're constantly fighting each other. Like if they believe in something enough, it's just true. It just works. I think that is amazing. I think that is so fucking cool.
I like the fact that the Orcs obviously, originated right from the beginning, almost like the Eldar, and so kind of theoretically designed as this weapon to counter the Necron as well. And although nobody seems to obviously understand that in M41, they seem to still be being quite effective in that regard. Like they're almost impossible to exterminate. They continually innovate and come up with ways to attack worlds and all sorts of stuff like that. They nearly destroyed the Imperium at one point. That's a great story, Charlie, to go off on. And they very much could again. And it's because they seem to be not a concern to begin with. They're really underestimated because when they're in small numbers, they're really not a big threat. You can just destroy them easily. But once they pick up momentum, it's like there's no stopping them. And also, they're the only good guys in 40k, so there's that going for them as well.
I mean, that the word good is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Like, they're not evil, but like they're still malicious and will eat you and your children and everything you love and hold dear.
Yeah, they can't help it though. I mean, that's not their fault.
Yeah, it's just they were just built different, right?
Yeah, you can't be mad at a pile of shit for smelling like poop. You know what I mean?
That's how I feel when I think of the Tyranids, and it's like they're just hungry.
They're just hungry little guys. Sure.
It's just, I mean, it's so funny though. Like sometimes I think about that, and then I read like an orc book, and they have like human slaves, and they just make them do shit, and it's just so awful. But then it's being written from an orc's point of view, so they're just kind of like giggling and like laughing and pointing fun at the humies, even though it's like the worst thing in the world.
Did you try any of the other 40k games, Charlie? Anything?
I played a little bit of Darktide, and I played a little bit of Bolt Gun.
Hey.
Oh yeah, Bolt Gun. Bolt Gun slaps. Bloody love that.
I like Bolt Gun too, yeah.
When somebody's come from Space Marine 2 or like any of the new series that are coming out and they're interested, they're coming into 40k, maybe they find some lore on YouTube. Charlie, for you, what is the more appealing side that because we talk about sort of looking at books or audiobooks and things like that. Are you more, do you find yourself pulled more towards the heresy, like learning more about that story? Or are you more interested in, for example, the unfolding future story with Gilliman and the Imperium now, which is being told obviously in Space Marine 2, and it's highlighting what's happening there. Those are the two big things. There are some Alien Xenos stuff happening as well. Of those three things, like which one would be more appealing to you, and I think why? I'm curious why as well.
So for me, it's about the unfolding. Like the Horus Heresy is amazing, but to me that's a component of the overall world. So I like learning about it, but it's not like, it's not why I like 40k because of the Horus Heresy. I like where it is and getting excited about where it can go, where it is going, and I like the future of it more.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, because one of the things that I've said a few times now, and I think I said this the last time on the show, but I'm pretty sure I'm literally going to die before I find out what happens with the Emperor because of how slow they reveal the lore. And it's like, guys, I had got a little time left in my life. I think one of the great things about 40k at the moment is that they really are pushing things forward. People complain a little bit sometimes, I think, that, we aren't finding out things quickly enough. But I think people forget where 40k was 15, 20 years ago, where you almost were not getting novels, and now they've released new novels literally every single week.
I mean, me and DK, we have our new favorite boy, Mr. Versace himself. Vashtor the Archiphane is arguably one of our favorite characters that have come out of the new lore.
Love Vashtor.
Poor Vashtor. I mean, he's going to get the Bellacore treatment, which is sad. Charlie, do you know much about Vashtor?
No, I haven't learned anything about Vashdor. I just looked him up though. He looks very cool. I see why you call him Versace.
He looks cool.
Yeah.
That's the trick. He
He's
looks cool.
badass.
That's where they caught you out. He looks cool, but then
Well, yeah.
but then you see his rules.
His rules are bad. His rules are very bad. But
His lore is great.
His lore is incredible. He's basically he's not a chaos god. He's basically like a demon, but he's a strong demon. Yeah, he wants to be a new chaos god. So he builds corrupted demon engines and demon weapons, and he sells them to the gods. But often, like a demon weapon has some demon trapped inside of it and will whisper sweet nothings to you.
Yep.
He kind of makes that, but often a lot of like smaller, lesser demons will want to be, I don't know, in like a big, disgusting machine and kill as many people as they can. And so they go to Vashdor, and Vashdor is like, okay, sign here on the dotted line with your blood. Feed me this many souls in this period of time, and then you get to keep your body forever. And then sometimes it doesn't work, and then you get to serve in his the soul forges forever. He's really fun, but he's been pushing the lore forward a lot. He's trying to unlock some old school shit, and it's good. Him, the lion are really kind of coming in the picture a lot. Call.
Well, the lion, we still need to, basically. So Charlie, the Primarchs, and they're returning. Sort of, some of them are returning now, right? And the lion obviously is with the Dark Angels, Guilliman with the Ultramarines. But really, we're waiting for them to kind of come together and discuss. That's what the big thing I'm waiting for anyway, is they haven't brought the lion and Guilliman. Bricky, I don't even know if Guilliman is aware that the lion is back again. Off the top of my head, I don't.
We've never had like them speaking, and the Cicatrix Maledicta makes communication really tough.
Yeah,
but
Guilliman's off on his crusade. He's very busy, so
yeah, I mean, I met Dante, and Dante reports to Guilliman, so I'm sure it'll be in a book at some point.
Yeah, but basically waiting for those two guys to come together is a big, big thing.
You mentioned you played the original Space Marine, and then what was the other one you said? Oh, Bolt Gun, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I never actually finished Bolt Gun though.
Yeah, I mean it's good. It's a little repetitive, but it's fine. Did you get any of the RTS like mechanic? Well, our Mechanicus is turn based, but Dawn of War, etc.
No, I keep hearing about Dawn of War. I used to be a big RTS guy when I was younger, like StarCraft and Halo Wars were my big ones, but I never tried the Warhammer RTS. I did forget to mention one, and this doesn't even pertain to 40K, but I played a lot of Warhammer Online, so their fantasy MMO. That shit slapped, and I was so sad when they shut it down.
Oh my god.
I didn't even know there was a Warhammer Online.
Yep,
when was that?
That, I think, was 2011. No, it would have been, I think it was like 2008 or 2009, actually, somewhere in that ballpark.
Well, like Dawn of War 1, I think came out in 2004, way back when. I think it's the main thing that comes down to every single Warhammer thing is it's so varied and there's so many factions.
Charlie, so obviously like you collect a lot of stuff I've seen before, like the cards. In terms of 40K, obviously you haven't played the game. You said you think it's a bit intimidating, but I really don't think it is, especially at the moment. I think it can seem that way, and there's a whole talk about how complex it is and their rules and stuff. But I think to get started with it, it's pretty straightforward. But I'm curious, like, are you more interested in sort of just collecting armies or characters and so on, so that you can have them as a collection and look at them and think, oh yeah, this is X thing in the lore? Or are you very much sort of leading up to wanting to actually play the game?
So I used to be just collecting things for the sake of collecting them. Recently, I've been playing like all of the card games that I've collected from. Like I'd always played Yu-Gi-Oh, but I'd never played enough Yu-Gi-Oh that would really justify the stupid collection I have for it until pretty recently. Same with Magic, same with One Piece. And for Warhammer, I really think they're beautiful pieces on their own right, especially like from professional painters, which I've been getting quite a few of. So I think for a display, they look great, but it's nice to be able to take them out of the display and play them. So I definitely want to learn it, so that way they'll have utility. But it is cool to be able to point to like Mortarion, right, which is a Primarch I just got in, and point to him and then be able to say like, this is the Primarch, this is his faction, this is now he turned to Chaos. Like it's cool to be able to do that.
I think this is one of the best things about 40K, and I've probably talked about it in videos that you might have seen. But the best thing for me about 40K is that people come in to it from different directions. So you might come in from a recommendation to check out a book. You might come into it from playing Space Marine 2, and then you learn, oh, there's the books, and there's the tabletop, and there's the painting. But I think what's great is that people can overlap those things, and you can enjoy it in different ways. And you may, for example, listen to the stories You might play the video games. You start collecting the models. You don't play the tabletop like you're saying with the cards initially, but over time you may do. But I love that it just has this big tent of different things going on with it. Because you were saying about like how much lore there is and how much you want to sort of invest and get into that. But is it appealing that, hey, this is curious, there's this world, and then they've got all these other things going on too?
Yeah, I think that's a huge draw to it. Like, it's not just me. Like I said, most of my friends have gotten into it too. Not even because I've been like spreading the gospel or anything. I'm not out here banging on Warhammer books trying to convert, but people have just been finding it through like the property blowing up. And I think a big draw is just how much there is to dive into. Like, there's so much fucking meat to it. So people really resonate with maybe one faction, and you'll have like 30 hours worth of content on YouTube to watch about that faction, or like 20 books to read about them. So the fact that there's just so much and so many different components to it just makes it really enticing.
Yeah, every single faction has your ability to dive super deep into it, and it's often unsurprising. Like DK, for example, when he was getting into the factions, his big intrigue were Thousand Suns, and what was the other one again?
It's just 1,000 Suns at the start, really.
It was mainly 1,000 Suns, but I remember as we would kind of like move through our different topics, because some things just kind of resonate. Like I think we're both. There's a Dark Angel book that came out about the lion, which is Son of the Forest, and it might, in my opinion, be like a top 5 40K book like ever made. But the two of us were just like, all right, I think we're Dark Angel fans now, because it takes just one book to fucking send you down that path.
Yeah, and that happens like every week. Every week, it's like you learn about a new faction and you do a deep dive, and it's like, oh no, it's another like really cool faction, and it's like, oh god, I'm gonna spend like, this is gonna be my identity for like the next month.
Yeah,
I've got like a 10,000 point, I've got like a 10,000 point solar auxiliary army in the house, which is like 4 giant boxes full of models, and I'm like, okay, in 2026 I'm going to start this project because it's just so massive. But yeah, you do kind of go down these horrifying rabbit holes, and then there's all the adjacent stuff as well, like Necromunda. There's tabletop games which are set like within hive cities, Charlie, or you can go to the Heresy and it's just Titans fighting, and there's loads of different. That's the other thing within 40K. It's like they've even got like adjacent sub-faction games and stuff like this, which is awesome. I mean, that's how broad of a world it is that they can actually create divergent games off of the main IP in the first place, which is epic,
Yeah, I think it's super cool. It actually brings me to a question for you guys that I have, because I haven't found anything in 40K that I think is lame. Like, there's nothing I don't like. So I'm curious on each one of you. Is there like a faction you hate, or a component of 40K that you guys just fucking despise?
Oh, perpetuals are definitely one of them.
Perpetuals are a big one.
Are you familiar with Vulcan, Primarch of the Salamanders?
Yeah,
he can't die.
Yeah.
Well, do you hate the ambiguity of this, Brookie? Is that what you're getting at? Like,
I hate I'm a big fan of stakes in stuff. Sure. I like when a death is meaningful. It's one of my biggest issues with Marvel right now, is that they can yank anyone from a multiverse, and it just like that weight doesn't matter as much.
It nullifies it. I get that.
Yeah, and so like Vulcan, literally, so far as we can tell, cannot die at all, and it drops some stakes. That's one of them. I mean, that's for Shy. I definitely have a couple, but Luetin and DK, you can go first.
Oh, I am renowned for my hatred of the Ultramarines.
Oh, so much. What the fuck?
I know. Listen, they used to be written so like they used to be so overpowered, and they used to be so boring, and I just never resonated with them. But the more I learn about like their named characters, learned about the Demon Kalaba, what Uriel Ventress went through, and then the Space Marine games, it's like, okay, I'm softening up, I saw Calgar, the superhero stomp, and I was like, all right, that's pretty dope. All right, okay. Ultramarines are okay.
They're guilt about the heresy.
They absolutely are. But I'm softening up to them, but man, they're just such Boy Scouts.
They were definitely worse back in the day to an extent.
Yeah.
But they definitely got a real glow up. I fully agree. Learning about Ketos Aquarius especially, I was like, oh shit.
I think that's why I will do. I think that's why individual character books are important. I was saying in the Heresy how like you can kind of skip over certain books because they just focus in on one thing. And like, maybe if you're trying to get like a big picture of the heresy, like you don't need to go in detail, like Nemesis, you know, do you need to go in on Nemesis? Like, do you need that one if you're going through the heresy series? You know, yes, but maybe not. So I think character books, like DK is saying, really flesh out factions. And that's kind of a problem with 40k, which is that it's so big sometimes that you can get a rough idea about something, but in order to go in on it, and that's, I've often said to people about this, I'm like, at what point do you drill down on a specific thing, right? Like Charlie probably knows about the Eldar, the Inari, but again, there are several books about the Inari which are super interesting, but that's pretty specific to put your time into that, to drill down on it. But in terms of what I think is lame, I mean, can I just say Tau? Can I can I just say Tau? Like, do I have to explain? Can I just say Tau?
Notorious faction Tau.
Is that a common take? Do people not like the Tau?
Well, I mean,
less lately. I think for people who have been into it for a while, like me and Luetin, we heard Tau hatred a lot more back when. I think they've softened a bit lately.
Yeah, they have. They've gotten a bit. Basically, Charlie, in the, when was it? Like early 2000s? I can't remember when they first came in.
Way back
late
when.
90s or late 90s. Essentially, Games Workshop was like, hey, people like Japanese mecha stuff. Let's crowbar that into 40k basically, and everybody, and so it does appeal to people who really love that aesthetic. And in truth, like I often sort of meme about it, but like the Tau are genuinely quite interesting as a faction. They do have some really cool stuff going on with their lore and where they're coming from, but they are a bit of a meme in 40k. And I mean that 40k is not short of memes, but the Tau are pretty easy pickings, let's just say.
I'll go ahead and plant my flag.
Yeah,
go. I'll be a Tau defender. I think they're very cool. I like
yeah, let's go.
Stylistically, they're cool, and I just love the idea that they like present as like, you know, the holier than thou good guys, but like they're just kind of all being mind controlled, basically. Like I think that's so cool.
Yeah, see again. That's Charlie's watched my video about this, so now I'm going to get a little shit about it. It's like, we don't know they're being mind controlled. We don't know that.
I think,
but yeah, it is a.
Aren't we just all mind controlled by our governments anyway?
Please no.
Isn't life just a mind controlling of superiority? Come on now.
Shy screaming in caps. Luetin lied in his video.
Yeah,
I started my video in Comics Sans. Like, you know, it was a big hint about that video.
Hold on now. Hold on. If we're talking about spreading misinformation, brother, I got a PhD. I don't think you're the one who has the issues here. Maybe we should just take the heat off of me. I'm okay with that one.
Imagine though, Luetin has just brainwashed me into just believing the Tau mind theory.
This is a really, really interesting part of 40k, and I've talked about this a bit recently. It's really, really funny, which is that, you know, in 40k, there's this whole thing about the propaganda of the Imperium and how they, you know, misdirect and change things. And that even within the sort of higher up bodies, like the Inquisition, there are departments which are completely contradicting and working against each other and being totally counterproductive. And Gilliman saw this when he came back to the Imperium. He was like, right, I can clearly see that all of this stuff, all of this history, which I'm trying to use to understand what has happened so I can make a big plan, is completely useless because they've just been propagandizing for like 5,000 years. So he just realizes that, it's pointless. But what's more interesting is that the 40k community is actually reflecting sort of the Imperium, because many times people get hold of something and then it turns into a meme, and then somebody takes that meme but then translates and tells that to somebody else who then reads that as the actual lore, and then enough people talk about it that they start thinking that's actually what happened. And it's just, so it just goes on and on. And yeah, like when you're making lore videos, there are obviously many YouTube channels which make lore videos, and sometimes when you're reading up about stuff, people might word it wrong, or you speak about something not quite as it is, you know, and which is why I try to be as careful as I can, unless like with the Tau video, I'm joking around. But yeah, that stuff seeps into the community, and over time it can lead to confusion. But I just love that mirror of the Imperium being this thing where misdirection and confusion and propaganda is constantly a thing. But it seems to happen in the 40k community as well, where people constantly taking something and spinning it out to an end degree. It's just cool. I just love how that kind of works.
So TLDR, Tau totally brainwashed, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm
that's what I've gleaned from this.
Luetin, the entire speech you just made had me slowly sinking into my chair farther and farther because you are literally just describing me. Like that. If I had known that every Faction Explained video would have popped off as much as it did, I probably would have fact checked that bitch a bit more because it's not perfect, and I make mistakes constantly. But no one has the ability, especially if you're doing a weekly podcast, to okay, here's the book on Dante. Like I don't have the time to read 40 hours of audiobooks for Dante in a week. So like sometimes you go with what other people say and what other like the wiki articles and stuff, and sometimes that shit isn't right, and it always throws me off. But
we should probably catch up with some of the non sort of book stuff. We should talk about some of the series things that are happening. So the two things that are happening: the secret level, which just came out this week. And also, finally, after the endless circles of people debating about it, Cavill and obviously Games Workshop have said the Amazon series is happening now. So that's pretty exciting. Did you check out the secret level this week, Charlie?
Yep, I watched it last night. I think it was a beautiful piece. I think it was super hype. It's just a shame that it doesn't have enough room to breathe. Like it's too short to get across like a big story. So instead you're watching a snippet of a story, which is still cool, but it kind of felt like an E3 trailer.
Mm-hmm.
See, I told you, DK.
Oh, I'm sorry for liking it.
No, I like it too. I think it's good. Like I enjoyed it. I just wish it was longer. That's all.
Same.
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely wish it was longer. No, I think we all wish it was longer. In fairness, but yeah, it was definitely. It didn't try. I think it's one of the reasons I liked it is that it didn't try to be more.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think I've seen as good of a representation of chaos on the big screen like that.
Yeah.
Loved that. It was horrifying. Absolutely incredible.
I really did love that where the guy's suit just pours out with he's either been turned to liquid or it's blood and it just pouring out, and it's just like that was really epic. The other thing I really, really liked, because I like little details. There's two actually, this and Space Marine 2. I loved the purity seals burning off, Bricky.
Yeah, when they enter a corrupted zone and the purity seals for the Emperor just flame right away.
Yeah,
it's great. It's a great touch.
Because go on, DK.
Oh, I was going to say, I kind of like the fact that like throughout this whole like 15 minutes, they're dragging this coffin around and I'm just like, oh my God, what's in the coffin? Is it a weapon? Is it a gun? Is it and then the big reveal happens. It's like, no, it's just a fucking psyker in there. They're just dragging around a goddamn psyker.
And he dies immediately.
Immediately.
I love that part because it's just like, you think it's a super weapon, right?
Yep.
Or something like going on there. And it's like, no, this is our battery psyker that we protected so that we all don't die when we get down here. And then he just immediately dies. It's great. It's such like horrible treatment.
Favorite part
of the short?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I love the way they display the brutality of the Space Marines. I think they did such a good job. So when they're getting like bum rushed and they just start popping heads, like it's just slowly walking and it's just a pile of gore and viscera behind them. It's so good. It's such a good depiction.
I have a question related to that then. How, obviously, like I've seen some of Godslap and, that doesn't hold back. And I'm curious, the violence, the gore, how important do you think that is to the IP? Because a lot of people are worried. Now we're moving into talking about the Amazon series. And obviously Amazon have done some series where they also don't hold back. But my question is, going into potentially in a few years' time, this series, how important do you think it is that they retain that level of visceral violence in the series? Basically, is it important enough to do you think it defines it in a way?
So I wouldn't say it defines it, and this might sound juvenile, but I do think it's like of paramount importance. Like it is so integral to a lot of the universe. Like the Grimdark, like you need it to be disturbing. You need it to be over the top. So I think they need to keep that DNA intact where they're not afraid to show something really gross and yucky. Like The Boys does it to a certain extent for a comedic effect, but if you take like the similar concept and extend it to something more grounded and serious, I think it has to be there for 40K.
Full agreement. I think one of the things that I've really appreciated is that in the past, mainly since COVID, it's become significantly more, people always say the word mainstream, but it has become significantly more popular. But with that, especially with the games recently and some of the books that they put out, it is not held back. They have really maintained the brutality. And I mean, there are certain things they won't do. Like, you're not going to have like the quadruple titty fiends from Slanesh, probably. Just
Yes.
like just for the classic
I'm gonna
reasons,
tell you,
you
if there's
know.
not 4 titties on them, if there's no 4 hunkers there, I'm out.
Well, it's not lore.
A man of
like,
taste.
Like,
Glad
how
to hear
dare
it.
they? You know, like they clearly don't care about their IP. But no, genuinely, like, there's obviously issues with that because a lot of cultures have a much less lenient, kind of policy when it comes to sex as they do to violence, which is its own silly topic. But like, besides that, I mean, every time I see a new 40K thing, like, you see those new codex arts and stuff, and it's just gross. It feels disgusting, and it's nice to remember that this is a world that you don't want to live in. It's the world I'd never want to live in.
Yeah. I think we said as well that in the secret level, the sort of demon figure, they designed that really well. Like, it was very uncomfortable and weird. It felt a little bit alienish, like in terms of sort of, it had face huggerish elements to me, but it still was like bizarre enough. And the fact that its mouth opened and then that went like into their eye, into their mind and soul, like, that was really awesome. It felt very, demonic, basically. They did a good job at that without it needing to be done through just violence. I think in some ways that's what I really enjoyed, was that they'd gone from this section where the Space Marines are fighting the cultists and they're just smashing hell out of them as they would, but then they go to this other figure and it brings this same level of horrific violence but in a totally different way. So that was quite good to achieve that in such a small piece of media. Do you know what I mean?
Total side point, I do like how we have confirmation that it's the fact that Titus is just built different. like there's no like fancy thing that we're aware of. No, he's just built different. He's just a fucked up kid, or was, and he's just his brain is that crazy. It's kind of a
man. As they were like going through all of the Space Marines and just like chaos was ripping him apart, I was like, oh, just wait till you get Titus. Wait till you get to Titus, bitch. Like, it's on.
I'm curious. I guess another question for you guys. You've all played the first Space Marine game?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So do you have any theories on what makes Titus so good about handling the chaos? Because they still haven't fully expanded on that yet.
I think he's just built different.
Just, you think it's just actually like he is built differently? Like he's just a different kind of guy?
I think his brain, I think he's just that. He's just him. And I mean that like in full sincerity. I think he's just him. 40K often has a thing where very often the application of force, it will work in every scenario to an extent. Every shield can be broken with enough guns. Every mine can be cracked with enough persuasion or whatever, right? Like, and I think at some point the reverse is just true. Some people, I think, just have that clarity of mind. Like, you like the Grey Knights, right? You remember Castle and Crow, the dude who holds the demon blade all around?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's an awesome character, but his whole point, he's not like genetically enhanced. Well, they all are, but you know what I mean? Like, compared to the other Grey Knights, he is just that fortified of mind.
Is it bad that I kind of want him to be just a little chaos tainted? Just like a little bit, and just like there actually is just a little bit of something chaos pilled inside of him, and that's what's giving him a little bit of like an edge over chaos, and he's just really good at like holding it back, and he's just really good at hiding. He's like, no, guys, trust me. No, my sources, I made it the fuck up. Like, believe me, I'm not touched by chaos.
Would have agreed with you before too, but yeah.
I've speculated on that a lot, that was potentially like one avenue they could go down. I did speculate also that maybe he is a little bit of a null, like maybe because the psychic scale is very, sliding. You can be a very powerful psychic, you can be a human with a little bit of psychic power, or you can go the other way. You can be a little bit null, and the idea of that is that in human society, if there's one person who nobody likes, they're probably a little bit of a null. They give off an irritating vibe to everybody. I think Titus sort of has a bit of that, and maybe that sort of protected him. But the Chaos Marine in the original Space Marine game, of course, he alludes a lot to, you have been selected or something. I mean, Tzeentch, like I said in my video as well, but it plays a long, long game. And it's interesting to me that Tzeentch was in the secret level video again. So maybe there is something going on there. I don't know.
I think it's important here. Charlie, do you know what a null is?
Yep.
Okay, good. I was thinking this whole time. I was like, oh, I hope he's read up on that one, because some people don't quite know what that is, and it throws it. But yeah,
That's another one I'm curious about, whether they will address that when they come to the series itself. That being, they always think about Space Marine 2. They show the Space Marines coming in, they save everybody as best they can. They obviously write off some aspects to it. But I mean, are they going to get into the Sisters of Silence? Are they going to get into them capturing humans of all ages, children included, throwing them on a ship, taking them back to Terra so the Emperor can consume them? Are they going to cover that? And it's, that I want them to do that. I want them to show not just Space Marine strong. I want them to show the Imperium is horrifying. They need to show that, because it's an important duality in 40K, I think.
That's one of the things that I have reservations about. I feel like, so for someone that doesn't know Warhammer, the big draw is like, oh, these Space Marines, they're like really cool war machines.
Yeah.
So you expect it to be kind of them just going around killing things. Like with the Sayama Peterson's Astartes, when I first watched that, obviously didn't know anything about Warhammer. So as they were going through like killing, then they get to the Psychers and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like it was a complete change that I didn't expect. And I feel like going for a more mainstream audience, they'll probably try and keep that as like a shock thing, as opposed to something that'll be like, pretty woven into it throughout. That's my guess. But I'd like if they were a little less, a little more willing to show that kind of element to it and put it more forefront.
It's going to be super interesting just to see how they handle it. Similarly to something like Dune. Dune is such a massive verse as well, with loads of big concepts. And that's, again, a big discussion to be had later about the similarities between Dune and 40K. But I mean, the navigators, etc., etc.
Yeah, Dune in any sci-fi property, right?
Yeah. But I mean, again, directors, for the Amazon series, we don't know exactly who's... do we know who's involved in the Amazon series yet? I don't know. I think it's too early.
Yeah, it's too early, I believe.
Hopefully, Denis Villeneuve will be finished with Dune and can just move straight on to 40K. That's my hope.
I would lose it, man. That'd be the best thing.
It can't be anybody else from me.
Can I get Robert Eggers on it? I want him to make something weird. I want him to make some random crazy shit. I'm seeing Nosferatu on Christmas Day, and I'm super hyped for it. To go along with the Imperium side of stuff, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to bring this up every single time. I'm sorry, DK. There's the Night Lord books, which are my favorite 40K books and my favorite books in general by a country mile. Absolutely phenomenal writing. But one of the fun parts is because it's so brutal. Like the main characters are a bunch of Chaos Space Marines and their slave named Septimus, because he's the 7th slave. That's the main characters, and it's awful. But in the second book, there's a really good excerpt when they're going to a space station to take a bunch of new slaves, and one of them is an Imperial machinist worker, and he's just like living in this 200 square foot hab block with his 16-hour work shifts of like putting things on conveyor belts, and his life is like the most miserable thing you've ever seen. But he's in the Imperium, and ironically, he gets more freedom to live aboard a Chaos vessel than he does in the Imperium. And that like dichotomy is interesting, because obviously the Night Lords like skin kids for fun. They're not cool guys, but seeing that like dichotomy and juxtaposition is, I think, really kind of shows the brutality of the Imperium as well.
Also, Charlie, you got to worship a chaos god. Which one are you picking?
Oh, yes.
I was thinking about that. It's probably got to be Khorne. Like it's like that's so simple. That's a really simple one.
Keep it really
Blood
pure.
for the blood god. Nice.
He'll never stab you in the back.
Exactly.
Just for the
stab you in the front.
Just the face. Over and over again.
Oh, Bricky, Bricky, do you know what was really funny? When I was watching the secret level episode, when they walk into the demon lair, it was almost shot for shot the Space King where they come in, and I was like, wait a minute, is this gonna mirror it? It was nearly the same, and I laughed.
Art imitates life, man. Okay, tiniest, smallest nitpick I have to ask you about Luetin. I love the secret level. I love the Astartes stuff. I think it's great. Do you ever find it a little bizarre that they're just like walking? Like there's no urgency? like
Yeah, they
agency?
do walk quite a long way, but I presume, I mean, again, as with anything 40k, you can rationalize it a million different ways.
True.
Who knows why they had to drop pod? Maybe they had to check through the area, secure it, blah, 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 blah. You know, you can work it out loads of different ways.
Yeah,
Charlie,
you're a
is there
badass space marine who needs to rush, right?
Yeah. Charlie, is there any other areas within 40k that like are particularly interesting? Like any kind of niche, not faction based, but I would say sort of stuff outside the main line? Because obviously you've kind of heard a lot of the lore already. So I'm thinking Dark Age of Technology, Malkador and his origins, other elements like that that really piqued your interest and are like, I would love to drill into this more.
I would be so happy. It'd be like Christmas morning for me if they just had more about the war against the AI. Like the entire that whole era is still just kind of broadly spoken about with the iron and all that. Like it doesn't actually have everything that happened, and I would love to know more. I think that's so fascinating. It's not like a concept that hasn't been explored. Like, I mean, even Mass Effect has that to a certain extent with like the Geth. But I just think in Warhammer, there's just so much they could do with that time period and that like grand catastrophe that it'd be amazing.
Yeah. I think I talked about it a lot in my STC video where we go over sort of like the whole golden, there's that excerpt that they find like a historical document and it goes through it. It's very kind of poetic. So it's kind of hard to interpret like what they're talking about, but it talks about the sort of iron men, golden men, doesn't it? And then there's that whole thing people talk about is the emperor one of these golden men from the Dark Age of Technology, etc., etc., etc. So
they keep it pretty deliberately obtuse most of the time.
Yeah, I think it will stay that way. What I like is that it's very 40k that there are seemingly many AI that have survived, but are just completely off the radar of humanity because they're so ignorant they can't tell. Like it happens in that one where it's the ship which that's great, isn't it? There's one of the great Mechanicus ships. The what are they called? I can't think. The words going out of my head. What are they? Arc Mechanicus. The forge ships of the Mechanicus, and this guy's going around in it, and eventually he ends up connecting because there's an AI in the ship, because a lot of these ships do sort of trace back even to the Dark Age of Technology, and so one of the tech priests ends up connecting with this AI in the ship, and they use it to fire its weapons, its Dark Age of Technology weapons at some Eldar, and they kill them horribly because the weapons are insanely overpowered. But what I love about that is that they've been going around the galaxy trying to find like a fully working STC sort of forge or whatever, without realizing that the ship they're on actually is that, and they're sort of going around trying to find it, but actually the ship that they're traveling in is what they're looking for, which is amazing. But again, they would never be able to use it because the Mechanicus are so ignorant comparative to the scale of knowledge in the Dark Age of Technology, and I love that.
Shy makes such a good point. That's a robot in Rogue Trader. One of the Rogue Trader minis, and yeah, you are 025, literally one of the Men of Iron, and you just put an Aquila on him, and when people ask, he's like, I have been remote controlled by Adeptus Mechanicus, and then no one says anything.
Yeah, that's true.
Are you familiar much with the Voton lore, Charlie, at all?
No, I don't know about that.
So they're like the new space dwarves. They're basically just rock and stone, but like in 40k, they're the most recent faction, so they're pretty new. Their big shtick is the Voton. What it is it's a gigantic STC kind of core that was sent to the people in the galactic core of the galaxy. But they have such a reliance on it that it's ended up turning into a situation where they almost kind of deify it. Not quite deify it, but they revere it. But it's been on the whole time for so long that it's like opening up 90,000 tabs of Google Chrome. And so like they ask it for questions all the time, and sometimes it'll take days to respond, but they've started going wacky. They started developing like personalities, and they don't answer things correctly, and it's gotten super weird. But those
they basically got like 1,000 Alexas stacked up next to one another, and
basically, and so like that's an AI core that's just there. But because dwarves are always so goddamn protective of all their stuff, like no one really knows. It's funny. There's been a really good time. Plus, they have AI models in the game. They just have robots that they work with.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But then if the Imperium ever asks them, they're like, "Shut the fuck up! Don't talk to me." And it works out quite well, in fact.
I swear it's not AI. Surely it's not.
Yeah, there's such the level of ignorance and backsliding
again,
the Imperium has.
This is one of the really funny things. Again, like I say, when you come into 40k, the thing that people see is big Space Marines, glory, honor, indestructible, like you see in that secret level. So you get this impression of the Imperium as just being this kind of righteous, sort of Spartan, society almost like. And then when you get into it, you realize that they are incredibly stupid, very ignorant. Obviously, compared to our technology now, highly advanced. But in the scale of humanity and where they should be in the galaxy, incredibly dumb. And they're too busy like fighting all these wars. They haven't got time to sort of focus on it. And it's just, it's a really cool dystopian bleakness to 40k, which I love. Just this kind of constant grinding failure,
I gotta find the photo. It's the new one. They just showed it off in the High Lords of Terra 10th edition artwork. And it's such a wild image. Because it's there we go. Here's part of it. Not the full image, but a lot of it. And these are like the people that lead humanity. These are the High Lords of Terra. And you just see that. You look to the right and you see like the lady there, and she's got two cherubs with guns on her shoulder pads. And the lady on the left has a church for a hat. And it's just the weirdest shit on the planet. And I love it. They're a bunch of cretins. And like when you think about it, these are the highest ranking individuals of humanity. And they look like this. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie, does that appeal to you? The sort of glory of the Imperium, but also this bizarre bleakness that exists there. It's this curious like double thing that it has going on, which I really enjoy, which you don't see so much in other verses, I think, where it's kind of like humanity is really amazing, powerful, epic, but it also sucks. Like they just fail all the time. I love that. I love that disparity.
Yeah, it wouldn't be as special if they didn't suck. If it was just like they actually are this righteous group, and they're only doing good guy stuff, it just wouldn't be as fun. Like I don't think the universe would work as well. Like if everyone else is a bad guy except the Imperium, it'd just be lame. I love the designs in Warhammer too. It's always so fucking cool. Like this idea that everything needs to be so extravagant to like a gaudy degree, like a Emperor class Titans, which is just like an entire citadel on top of a Titan. It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's
and
so
the little
silly.
and have you seen in those images of those Titans, Charlie? Like in the legs of those Titans, they have little like steps coming down, and they have armies of soldiers in their legs. So as they're walking across the battlefield, so they have the big church on top, and they're fighting and they're shooting these weapons that are like as powerful as a sun. And then little doors open and their legs at the bottom, and thousands of soldiers run out of their legs. Like I just love it, absolutely love it.
Actually, to roll back that same question you had us, I mean, you said Necrons are the first army you're starting. Which army just doesn't appeal to you in the slightest?
See, that's the thing. Like, since I've been talking a lot about Warhammer recently, like on streams and stuff, so people ask, like, what do you like and what don't you like? It's so easy for me to say what I like. I haven't found anything yet that I actually don't like. Even Perpetuals, it seems like most people don't like that. But I think Perpetuals, like the concept of a never-dying figure, can be used really well. They don't have to die per se. There's a lot you can still do, like creatively with imprisonment, which we've seen other media do with a character that's immortal. Like you can make it work. Multiverse stuff, I don't like. So the one thing that I do have a bit of a gripe with is the way it plays with time occasionally. I don't like. It hasn't happened a lot, but there is times where it tinkers with time that I'm not too big a fan of, because I think anything when you get to time manipulation is way too messy. It gets way too convoluted, and I usually try and steer away from that kind of stuff because it doesn't appeal. But everything else I think has just been kind of a slam dunk for shit that I like.
I don't know,
They've
man.
done
I
a
think
good
the
job
answer
of-
was Tau.
Yeah, go on.
I think the answer was Tau. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't think they will ever go down any kind of multiverse route personally, because I just don't think that's how 40k is done. And Charlie, this actually links to something I was going to say earlier, which is that they are careful about how quickly they reveal stuff. And although they have been banging out a load of stories recently, they don't, I mean, Ricky will tell you, like, they don't get into the meaty stories without being more careful about it. And look, they don't get everything right. There are, people have opinions about stories and events they've done which are good or bad or interpreted well or not. But I think overall, they try hard to not screw it up, because I think it's seen as like an ongoing timeline rather than we get to this point and then we can do it again in a different way and do it again in a different way. I don't think they're interested in going that direction, and yeah, I hope they never do.
I think all of us here are pretty excited for the future of the property. Like I just got into it, and it seems like I got in at the point where everything's starting to fall into place, where they're doing more and more and bigger and bigger. I know for a while Games Workshop had a reputation of being like really against like growing it like too much. At least that's the impression I got. Like with Astartes, they had the big drama where they wanted to take it down, like they didn't like that. But I mean, from my perspective, it looks like they're not clamping down as hard. Like the Awakening's still up. So to me, it just seems like they're really looking to push it more.
I think it's moving in the right direction. I think the broader the company and the IP gets, the more they start to see that. I think they're working with people more. When that series comes out, that's going to be the big deal. That's going to be like a, era-defining time. Just a last thought as well, Charlie. I mean, do you find it particularly, well, I mean, it is interesting, but do you find it particularly interesting, or any thought about how kind of 40K has sort of been off the cultural radar? It's always been there, and I think if you're into gaming culture and that sort of thing in general, you kind of know of 40K. And only in the last sort of 5 years, it's really got some teeth. And I think when this series comes out, that's going to be it. Like, it's going to be fully, I hate to say it, but sort of, well, I don't know, not mainstream. I don't think it'll be mainstream, but
yeah, but before you would say, like, I play a lot of Warhammer, and people would say, what's that? And then now eventually you'll say, oh, yeah, I think I saw a little bit of that. Like, it's kind of hidden that point.
I don't know, like a big Prime series, Henry Cavill, like that. I don't think mainstream is like that far off from what like that success. Like if it's successful, like I think that could push it like full on mainstream, right?
I certainly think so. Like that's a crazy big name to have attached to it. And in my perspective, Warhammer has always had a really healthy community, from at least since I've been in it, like looking back on everything. Like there's entire studios that are, their whole business is painting minis for people, and they make a killing doing that. There's whole YouTube channels that get, like you guys, millions upon millions of views, with a dedicated community that just love the property. So like it feels like it's always been healthy, just for some reason falling to the wayside in like the cultural zeitgeist or whatever. But it in a similar way, like Magic the Gathering, right? Magic the Gathering's been there since the 90s, but only recently have people really been starting to talk about it more and make more content around it. So I feel like with this show, it's going to be that big like eureka moment, like Warhammer's always been good and now you're all hearing about it. But it is here, it's been here for a long time, so it's gonna blow up.
Yep.
That's the hope. I mean, I feel like, everyone got trapped in their homes for a whole year, and that it's really good time to paint minis,
and look up lore videos, and yep.
Yeah, that was the time for it. No, I think
it's a shook up bottle just waiting for someone to uncork it.
I think it's good. I think for the most part, my only real issues has just been general handling of certain things. I play a ton of the tabletop personally, and it's that's a thing that I think is becoming a bit more also mainstream as people kind of get into it, and especially with the rise of things like Tabletop Simulator, there's a little bit more like avenues to understand. But I don't know. There's a lot of options. Oh yeah, that's a good question. We were gonna ask. Right. Yeah, you gonna paint some minis?
Ooh. So I like building them. I suck so much ass at painting, it's gross.
Oh, same, brother. I feel the exact same way.
I don't think I'll be painting them too frequently, but I've been buying painted minis from actually talented people, so I don't just ruin the fucking minis.
I feel like it's a time thing. Like I know my old minis. Oh my god, my first army was Grey Knights, and holy shit, the thickness of those paint. They are so bad. But I think for me, it's just time too. We're all busy people.
Yeah, there's so many tiny little nooks and crannies and crevices that you got to get some paint in. It's so much, and I'm just not good at it.
Yep. And then when you get like the really expensive models, and it's like, oh no, I paid a lot for that. My painting skills are not up to par for this. It's staying in the box.
It's intimidating. I have models, or I have larger models, which I kept primed for like a year, 2 years before I even could start to approach them, because I had to plan out what sort of color scheme I was going to paint, how weathered it was going to be, all this kind of stuff. And yeah. But it is also a journey like anything. And just building them is really fun. Some people hate building. I find it really therapeutic.
Same. I love building.
yeah, it's just, you can just steadily go along, build, you can listen to some stuff, listen to some lore, listen to some stories. So yeah, it's good.
Rolling around time frame. Luetin, anything to add, or should we wrap it all up?
I think we can wrap up. I think covered everything there. So yeah, it's been great.
Hell yeah. Oh, well, hey, Charlie, genuinely, really excited that you're getting into the hobby.
I wish I got into it sooner. I guess if we're gonna wrap here, I'd like to throw one question out, kind of close it here.
Yeah.
Do you guys think the Warhammer community is ready for it to be mainstream? Because I think once the Amazon series hits, it will be. Is that going to be something the community's excited about or kind of skeptical on?
Depends on the person. Yeah.
There's going to be a mixed bag.
I mean, every community. Do you watch much Formula One stuff?
Not really. Not often.
Oh, okay, so I don't either, but my sister and her friends are really into it. And her thing she mentioned was like when it got, I guess Formula One had like a Netflix movie or like a something like that, and I don't remember exactly the name of the movie, but it got a ton of people into, like, a documentary into Formula One, and the fan base had a name for the people who got in from that movie because they're not like real Formula One fans, and I honestly feel like that is exactly what it will, and it honestly is currently happening in Warhammer, but I mean, those voices don't really get to have a say.
I think the message overall is it's a positive era. I'm happy that things are being told and unfolding. I mean, Christ, Bricky, like the way things are going at the moment, I mean, you can't keep up with the stories coming out. You know?
No, you genuinely can't. I fully agree. Everyone I know that like there's some grouches, no doubt, but like everyone I know that likes Warhammer generally got into it in 8th edition. And if they didn't, and they got into like 3rd edition in 2006 or whatever it was, they took a huge break because they were bored, and now they're finally back and they're stoked. And it's such a widespread community that it's going to be hard to get every opinion. But so far, everything that we've gotten has stuck to the values of this shit sucks, this universe sucks, it's bloody and gory and awful. And that's awesome. That's what I want.
God damn it, we love it.
And God damn it, we love it.
I think it just depends entirely on how it's handled. In terms of anything getting bigger, you can handle it well or you can not. I think the key thing with that is staying sort of true to the defining aspects of it, like we've already talked about. Basically, don't do what Star Trek have done. You know, don't do Picard. Don't like completely burn whole decades of lore and series. You know, don't do like what Star Wars has done, where they took all the extra material and just chucked it and burned it as well. Things can be really positive and really good as they expand. For the longest time, it was 40k was stagnated, and that's the point where I took a break for like 3 editions or so, because nothing was happening. You know, they told some stories, but nothing really was happening. And I think people forget that really quickly. People forget that there was like 10 years of 40k being a thing where nothing really happened. There was no forward progression. 40k used to be, Charlie, basically the High Lords of Terror are ruling from Earth, Terra. Yeah, that's it. You know, the Imperium is basically fighting aliens and keeping them at the door. And that's basically it. Nothing is really happening. And now we've got the Inari. We've got the Chaos Gods pushing back. We've got Abaddon coming in. We've got Guilliman returning. We've got the Emperor sort of stirring. There's all these things that are happening. I also think if you look back to like the series where it was like the Space Marines, some of the original animations sucked. Just, you know, the quality of the animation was not there. And I think another thing people have talked about with this series, potentially this Amazon series, is how seamlessly are they going to integrate visual effects and human characters, you know, how seamlessly, because we all know that that's very, very, very hard to do in a way where your eye is not deceived. But I think in terms of the question of, is it going to be well received? It's dependent on all these things. It's dependent on how it's handled. And a lot of people, of course, want to believe that something going mainstream will just destroy it automatically these days. I don't think that's the case. I think that there are going to be things inevitably that are compromised because that is just the nature of it. But I think everything that I see leads me to believe that they will want to keep a tight rein on it. Everything that you see Games Workshop do and their writers want to keep it tight. And if they don't, it'll be to their own failure because it will inevitably implode over time if they don't.
I have tentative hope. I think if it doesn't go well, it won't be because of anything going mainstream. It'll be the same reason everything goes wrong. Plain old mismanagement.
And also, Charlie, I'll just say a big thanks for you for coming and speaking to us today as well. I think people like yourself coming in and having that sort of interest and wanting to be involved with the 40k community is equally important. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just being like, hey, I've heard about this thing and I'm going to talk about it a lot. Getting involved with a community, I think, is really important. And I think people coming in and doing that is really great. So I really appreciate your time and talking to us today about it all. It's really been really great.
No, thanks for having me on board. Like, everything I've seen from the community has been extremely positive. Like, it's not just Luetin and Bricky that I watch. I watch a lot of Westhammer as well. Like, I've been very deep into, like, actually consuming the content and learning about the community as best I can. And I just really like all of it. Like, I haven't seen anything, like, negative or anything like that. It's all been great. So I'm excited to see it continue to grow.
Hell yeah. No, I'm very, very happy to hear that. I would be honest, super surprised that you had a bunch of miniatures yourself. That caught me a bit off guard. But like, honestly, I have like 9 armies myself. Every time there's an army I don't really care much about, I read a book about them and I'm like, fuck, I guess we're starting Gene Stealer cults now.
You just reminded me of the Gene Stealer cults. I almost pulled the trigger on getting a comic painted version of the Gene Stealer cult.
Oh, yeah, dude, the Gene Stealer cults are amazing. I love them.
That's gonna be super. I don't even know anything about Gene Stealer cult, but I just thought they looked really cool and the paint job was nuts, and I was almost like, I'm gonna do it.
And that is a wrap on this discussion. Again, for this format today, I've cut the ending because it doesn't really make sense for that to sort of play out here on the channel. But Charlie has said he'd be up for more opportunities in the future. I obviously have also a ton of people that it would be fun and up for discussions with. So a great new year to you all, and the content will of course continue in January. So as always, I'll see you all in the next one.